He thought no one was listening. Just a single dad, working late, humming an old lullaby to himself. But when she heard his voice, the world stopped. One moment of humming turned into a storm of fame, praise, and ugly whispers that he didn't belong. From janitor to sudden star, to nearly losing everything he loves. Will his hidden gift lift him higher than he ever dreamed? Or will powerful voices silence him forever? What happens when the song in your heart collides with a world that wants you quiet? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The fluorescent work lights cast long shadows across the empty stage of the Lakeside Performing Arts Center. The grand hall, usually filled with music and applause, now echoed only with the gentle swish of Eli Warren's mop against the polished wooden floor. His weathered hands moved in practice strokes, leaving trails of dampness that gleamed under the harsh lighting. At 54, Eli knew every inch of this stage. 14 years of cleaning it had taught him where the boards creaked, which corners collected the most dust, and how the space transformed from an empty platform by day into something magical at night. His shoulders, strong but tired from years of manual labor, moved rhythmically as he worked. The janitor's uniform hung loosely on his tall frame, the navy fabric faded from countless washes. The name tag reading E. Warren was pinned slightly crooked. Maya had helped him attach it this morning, her teenage fingers not quite as steady as she'd pretended. The thought of his daughter brought a small smile to his face. Without thinking, Eli began to hum softly. It was an old lullaby, one he used to sing to Maya when she was small. The melody was simple but sweet, passed down from his late wife's family. The sound carried naturally in the perfect acoustics of the empty hall, though Eli remained unaware of how his rich baritone filled the space. He paused near center stage, absently running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The rehearsal earlier had left scattered pieces of tape marking positions for tomorrow's gala performance. As he bent to peel one up, his humming grew slightly louder, the melody taking on a deeper resonance. In the shadows of the wings, a figure stood motionless. Isabella Marquez had returned after hours to practice, as she often did before major performances. The world-renowned soprano preferred the solitude of late-night rehearsals, away from the scrutiny of directors and critics. She had slipped in quietly, not wanting to disturb the cleaning staff, but now found herself rooted in place. The lullaby floating through the air made her breath catch. It was the same melody her mother used to sing, a piece of her childhood, in a small apartment filled with the sense of her mother's cooking and the sounds of old records. Isabella's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone, careful not to make a sound. Eli moved methodically across the stage, unaware of his audience. His humming continued, the notes pure and unforced. There was no artifice in his voice, no trained technique, just raw, natural talent shaped by years of singing in church choirs and to his daughter. The melody swelled and softened as he worked, his movements almost like a dance with his mop. The work lights caught the silver at his temples, and the lines around his eyes, marks of years spent raising Maya alone, of early mornings and late nights, ensuring she never went without. His humming carried all of that somehow, the weight of responsibility, the touch of sadness, but also an undercurrent of gentle joy. Isabella's finger hovered over the record button on her phone. She had heard countless voices in this hall, trained professionals, rising stars, seasoned veterans. But there was something about this voice that made her pause in the middle of her own rehearsal aria. The purity of it, the unself-conscious beauty, struck a chord deep within her. Eli's humming grew softer as he worked his way toward stage left, the lullaby floating like a gentle cloud in the vast space. His movements were unhurried, each stroke of the mop deliberate and careful. The simple melody carried memories of rocking Maya to sleep, of quiet evenings when the tune was the only thing that could soothe her tears. The phone in Isabella's hand moved almost of its own accord, pressing record as she stood transfixed. The sophisticated recording equipment would capture every nuance of Eli's natural talent, though he remained completely unaware of being observed. The lullaby reached a particularly tender phrase, and Isabella felt tears spring to her eyes. Her own mother had sung those exact notes, in that exact way, on countless nights of her childhood. The coincidence seemed almost impossible. Yet here it was, carried on the voice of a janitor who had no idea of the gift he possessed. Eli's humming faded to nearly a whisper as he approached the final measures of the lullaby. His movements slowed, as if the melody itself was guiding his pace. The mop made soft, swooshing sounds against the stage floor, a quiet accompaniment to the haunting tune. Isabella stood absolutely still, her phone capturing every moment. Her own planned aria was forgotten, the sheet music clutched loosely in her other hand. All her years of training and performing seemed to fall away as she listened to this pure, unaffected voice carrying a melody that bridged past and present. The final notes of the lullaby hung in the air like stars and then faded into silence. Eli straightened up, rolling his shoulders to ease the familiar ache. He glanced at his watch, still enough time to finish before heading home to make sure Maya had completed her homework. In the wings, Isabella remained frozen, her phone still recording. A single tear tracked down her cheek, though she didn't move to wipe it away. The aria she had come to practice was silenced before it began, replaced by something far more powerful than any rehearsed performance. The work lights buzzed softly overhead, and Eli resumed his mopping, unaware that his simple lullaby had just changed everything. His voice, hidden for so long in empty halls and quiet moments, had finally found an audience that recognized its true worth. The thought of his daughter brought a gentle melody to his lips. It was an old lullaby, one his late wife Maria used to sing to Maya when she was small. The tune flowed naturally as he worked, his rich baritone voice filling the empty hall with warmth. That melody, a soft voice spoke from the shadows. "I know it." Eli's mop clattered against the bucket as he startled, water splashing onto his work boots. From stage left, an elegant figure emerged into the work lights. Isabella Marquez, the renowned soprano who'd been rehearsing with the company all week, stood watching him with glistening eyes. "I'm sorry, Miss Marquez," Eli stammered, quickly retrieving his mop. "I didn't realize anyone was still here. I'll come back later." "No, please." Isabella held up her hand, her voice gentle but firm. "That song, the one you were humming, my mother used to sing it to me when I was little." Eli shifted uncomfortably, his weathered hands gripping the mop handle. "Just an old tune, ma'am. Helps pass the time while I work." Isabella moved closer, her heels clicking softly on the stage floor. Even in casual rehearsal clothes, she carried herself with natural grace. "That's no ordinary humming, mister?" She glanced at his name tag. "Mr. Warren, you have a remarkable voice." "Just Eli, ma'am." He shook his head, attempting a polite smile. "And it's nothing special, just something I picked up singing in church." "Nothing special?" Isabella's eyebrows rose. That warm tone, that natural resonance? She took another step closer. "I've trained with some of the finest voices in Europe, Mr. Warren. I know talent when I hear it." Eli's cheeks warmed. He dipped his mop into the bucket, trying to return to his task. "That's kind of you to say, but I'm just here to clean, Miss Marquez." "Isabella," she corrected softly. "And sometimes the most beautiful music comes from unexpected places." She paused, studying him with knowing eyes. "Would you sing just a few bars for me? Properly this time?" "Oh no, I couldn't," Eli began, but was interrupted by heavy footsteps approaching from the wings. "Hey, what's going on here?" A security guard strode onto the stage, flashlight beam cutting through the work lights. Officer Jonas, his badge gleaming, fixed Eli with a suspicious glare. "Custodial staff are supposed to be done by 10. Why are you still lingering around?" "I was just finishing up," Eli said quietly, his shoulders tensing. He'd seen that look before, the one that assumed the worst about a man in his position. "He's with me." Isabella stepped forward, her voice taking on an authority that filled the space. "Mr. Warren was kind enough to stay late while I finished my personal rehearsal." Jonas faltered, his flashlight lowering as he recognized the star soprano. "Ms. Marquez, I didn't realize, but regulations state." "Mr. Warren is doing his job excellently," Isabella cut in firmly. "And his presence has been invaluable to my practice this evening." She turned to Eli with a warm smile. "In fact, we were just discussing some musical collaboration." The security guard's mouth opened and closed, clearly torn between his duty and contradicting the venue's headline performer. "Well, I suppose if you vouch for him." "I absolutely do," Isabella stated, leaving no room for argument. She placed a gentle hand on Eli's arm. "Thank you for your diligence, Officer Jonas, but Mr. Warren has my complete trust and appreciation." Jonas nodded stiffly, clicking off his flashlight. "Very well, Ms. Marquez. Just make sure everything's locked up when you leave." He retreated, his footsteps fading into the wings. Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Isabella replied simply. No one should be made to feel unwelcome in a place meant for music. She smiled at him again, warm and genuine, especially not someone with a gift like yours. "Miss Marquez, Isabella," Eli corrected himself, still gripping his mop like an anchor. "I appreciate your kindness, but I really should finish up here." "Of course," she nodded, understanding in her eyes. "But don't think this is the end of our conversation about your voice. Some gifts are too precious to keep hidden." The kitchen clock read 6:15 a.m. as Eli cracked eggs into a bowl, his movements careful and practiced. Morning sunlight filtered through the small window above the sink, catching the steam from his coffee cup. The ancient toaster popped, making him smile. It always needed an extra push to release the bread properly. "Maya," he called up the narrow staircase, "breakfast in 5 minutes, honey." A muffled teenage groan answered him. Eli chuckled, remembering how his own mother used to wake him for school. He whisked the eggs with a fork, adding a pinch of salt and a splash of milk, the way Maria had taught him. The memory of his late wife brought a familiar ache, but he pushed through it, focusing on the task at hand. The sound of shuffling footsteps announced Maya's arrival. His 14-year-old daughter appeared in the doorway, her school backpack slung over one shoulder, dark curls still messy from sleep. "Morning, Dad," she yawned, dropping into her usual chair at their small kitchen table. "Morning, sunshine." Eli slid a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her. "Did you finish that science project?" Maya nodded, already digging in. "Mrs. Chen said my robot design was really creative. Thanks for helping me get the parts." "That's my girl." Eli ruffled her hair as he passed, earning an eye roll that couldn't quite hide her smile. He'd worked an extra cleaning job last month to afford those robotics components, but seeing her enthusiasm made it worth every extra hour. "Dad?" Maya's voice turned serious. "Tommy Rodriguez said his mom saw you at the art center last night. She works in the box office." Eli busied himself with washing the pan. "Just doing my job, honey." "She said you were singing." Maya pushed her eggs around the plate. "Like you used to, in church, before Mom." The words hung in the air between them. Eli dried his hands slowly on a dish towel, then sat down across from his daughter. "I was just humming while I worked, nothing special." Maya's dark eyes, so like her mother's, studied him. "You should sing more. Mom always said your voice was beautiful." Eli's throat tightened. He reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. "Finish your breakfast, kiddo. Bus comes in 15 minutes. As Maya ate, Eli packed her lunch, turkey sandwich, apple, and the last chocolate chip cookie from the batch they'd made together on Sunday. He tucked a small note inside the paper bag, like he did every day. "Proud of you always. Love, Dad." The morning routine continued. Maya brushing her teeth while Eli cleaned up the kitchen, both of them doing final checks for homework and permission slips. At the front door, Maya suddenly turned and hugged him tight, catching him off guard. "Love you, Dad," she mumbled into his work shirt. "Love you too, baby girl." He held her close for a moment, then stepped back. "Have a good day at school." Eli watched from the porch until Maya reached the bus stop at the end of their street, joining the small cluster of other kids. Only when the yellow bus disappeared around the corner did he head inside to get ready for work. Later that morning, Eli pushed his cleaning cart down the Arts Center's main hallway, nodding hello to the usual early arrivals. Janet at the box office, Mike from maintenance, the coffee cart guy whose name he could never remember. The morning's interaction with Maya had left him thoughtful, remembering days when music had been a bigger part of their lives. "Mr. Warren?" He turned to find Isabella Marquez approaching, her rehearsal clothes a stark contrast to last night's elegant performance wear. She looked more approachable in yoga pants and a loose sweater, but Eli still felt self-conscious in his gray custodial uniform. "Ms. Marquez," he said politely, stepping aside to let her pass. Instead, she stopped. "I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to talk about last night." "Ma'am, I apologize if I disturbed your practice." "Please," she held up a hand, "don't apologize. Actually, I have a proposition for you." Eli's grip tightened on his cart handle. "I appreciate your help with security last night, but really, I'm just here to do my job." "That's exactly why I want your help," Isabella smiled warmly. "I'm hosting a small community masterclass this weekend. Nothing fancy. Just local music lovers, students, some seniors from the community center. We focus on joy and connection through music, not perfection." "I'm not sure what that has to do with me." "I heard something special in your voice last night, Mr. Warren. Something genuine and touching that can't be taught in conservatories." She paused, watching his reaction. "Would you consider joining us? Just to share that lullaby you were humming?" Eli's first instinct was to refuse. He had his routine, his responsibilities. Maya needed stability, not her father chasing impossible dreams. But he remembered her words that morning about her mother loving his voice. Isabella seemed to sense his hesitation. "It's very informal. This Saturday, 2 hours at most. The community center on Oak Street. I believe you know Reverend Lila? She's helping organize it." The mention of Reverend Lila, who'd been so kind to them after Maria's passing, gave Eli pause. The Reverend had often told him not to bury his gifts, though he'd always assumed she meant his handyman skills that helped keep the church in repair. "I'll need to check if I can get coverage for my Saturday shift," he said finally. "Of course." Isabella reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. "My number's on there. Just let me know." The evening air carried hints of autumn as Eli walked up the worn stone steps of First Methodist. Through the stained glass windows, warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, and the sound of voices raised in song drifted out into the gathering dusk. He hesitated at the heavy wooden doors, his hand resting on the brass handle. Inside, the sanctuary glowed with soft lamplight. The choir, dressed in casual clothes for their weekly practice, stood arranged in neat rows on the risers. At the piano, Reverend Lila Clark's fingers danced across the keys as she led them through "How Great Thou Art." Her silver hair caught the light as she swayed with the music. Eli slipped into a back pew, hoping to go unnoticed. The familiar smell of old hymnals and wood polish wrapped around him like a comfort blanket. He'd spent countless hours in this space years ago, before Sarah got sick, when they'd sung together in the choir. His throat tightened at the memory. The final notes of the hymn faded away, and Reverend Lila turned on the piano bench to face her choir. "Much better, everyone. Take 5 minutes, get some water, and we'll work on the descant for Sunday." As the singers dispersed, chattering quietly, she spotted Eli in his corner. Her face broke into a warm smile as she made her way down the center aisle toward him. "Well, if it isn't Elias Warren. It's been too long since you've darkened my door, young man." "Evening, Reverend," he said, standing to greet her. Despite her small stature, Lila Clark had a presence that commanded respect, though her eyes always held a hint of mischief. Sit," she said, settling beside him in the pew. "What brings you by? Not that you need a reason. This is still your church home, whether you show up or not." There was gentle rebuke in her tone. Eli's hands fidgeted in his lap. "I suppose I needed some advice, ma'am." "About that beautiful voice of yours that's suddenly causing such a stir?" When he looked startled, she chuckled. "Small town, Eli. News travels fast, especially in church circles. Isabella Marquez herself called me this morning. She did? Eli's shoulders tensed. Reverend, I was just doing my job, cleaning up after rehearsal. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. Trouble? Lila's eyebrows rose. Is that what you call a God-given gift? Because last I checked, the Lord didn't hand out talents so we could hide them under a bushel. She paused, studying his face. You used to know that. You and Sarah both. The mention of his late wife's name made Eli's chest ache. That was different. That was church singing, not. He gestured vaguely. Whatever this is. Different venue, same gift, Lila said firmly. She reached over and patted his hand. The Lord moves in mysterious ways, Eli. Sometimes he uses a burning bush, sometimes he uses a classical singer with a cell phone. A few choir members drifted back into their places, their curious glances darting toward Eli. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Isabella wants me to join some kind of community masterclass, he admitted quietly. Says it would be good for the outreach program. And you're here because, Lila prompted, though her knowing look suggested she already had his number. Because I'm scared, Eli whispered, the words barely audible. Because every time I think about singing again, really singing, not just humming to myself, I hear Sarah's voice telling me to go for it, and it hurts too much. Reverend Lila was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap. The remaining choir members filed back in, but she held up a finger to keep them waiting. Eli, she said finally, her voice gentle but firm. Grief is heavy, and you've carried it a long time. But Sarah wouldn't want you to use it as an excuse to bury your voice forever. That gift didn't die with her, it's still very much alive in you. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn Bible. Opening it to a marked page, she handed it to him. Read this. Eli squinted in the dim light at the highlighted verse. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. 1 Peter 4:10, Lila said softly. You know it well. The question is, what are you going to do with it? The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the empty pews of First Methodist. Isabella sat in the front row, her phone ready to record, while Eli stood nervously beside the piano where Reverend Lila was arranging sheet music. Just think of it as practice, Isabella said warmly, noting how Eli's hands were stuffed deep in his work uniform pockets. No pressure at all. Eli nodded, though his throat felt dry. It's been years since I've sung with anyone else, he admitted. The last time had been at his wife's funeral, but he kept that thought to himself. Reverend Lila's fingers touched the piano keys lightly. We'll start with something simple. Amazing Grace, everyone knows that one. She played the opening notes, filling the church with gentle music. Isabella stood and moved beside Eli. I'll take the melody first, then you join in harmony on the second verse, just like we discussed. Her smile was encouraging. Remember to breathe from your diaphragm like I showed you. Eli closed his eyes as Isabella began to sing, her crystalline soprano voice rising pure and clear in the church acoustics. The familiar hymn wrapped around him like a comfort blanket. When his entrance approached, he took a deep breath and let his baritone voice blend with hers. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Their voices intertwined, Isabella's soaring high notes complementing Eli's rich lower tones. The harmony they created filled every corner of the sanctuary. Reverend Lila's playing grew softer, letting their voices carry the song. As they finished the verse, Isabella's eyes were shining. That was beautiful, Eli. Let's try it once more, and I'll record it this time. She held up her phone. Just for us to review, to help with the harmonies. They sang it again, and this time Eli felt more confident. His voice grew stronger, more assured as it joined with Isabella's. When the last note faded, there was a moment of perfect silence in the church. Reverend Lila broke into applause. Now, that's what I call making a joyful noise unto the Lord. Isabella stopped the recording and played it back. Their blended voices filled the church once again, and Eli was surprised by how natural they sounded together. See? Isabella grinned. Nothing to be nervous about. You have such a gift, Eli. He ducked his head, embarrassed, but pleased. Just church choir training from way back. Well, it's stuck with you, Reverend Lila said, closing the piano. The Lord doesn't give us talents to hide them away. They spent a few more minutes reviewing the recording and laughing about their timing on certain phrases. Isabella pointed out places where their harmony especially clicked, and even Eli had to admit it sounded good. I'll send you the recording, Isabella said as they prepared to leave. It might help you practice at home. The next morning, Eli was making breakfast when his phone started buzzing with notifications. Puzzled, he picked it up while flipping pancakes for Maya. His eyes widened as he saw dozens of messages, many from numbers he didn't recognize. "Dad," Maya called from the table. "Your phone keeps making noise." Eli opened one of the messages. It contained a link to a social media post, too. A video clip of him humming in the Performing Arts Center, recorded that first night. The post had thousands of likes and shares already, with comments pouring in by the minute. "The humming janitor with the golden voice," read the caption. Eli's hands began to shake as he watched the brief clip of himself, unaware he was being recorded, singing that old lullaby while mopping the stage. More messages kept coming in. His phone buzzed again and again as the video spread across different platforms. Eli sat down heavily in a kitchen chair, the pancakes forgotten on the stove. "Dad?" Maya was beside him now, peering at his phone. "Is that you singing?" Eli nodded mutely, watching as the view count on the video climbed higher and higher. His private moment of remembrance had somehow become public property overnight. The simple act of humming his wife's favorite lullaby, something he'd done countless times while working, was now being shared across the internet. The pancakes began to smoke, and Maya rushed to turn off the stove. "It's okay, Dad," she said, putting her arm around his shoulders. "You sound really good in the video." But Eli barely heard her. His mind was racing with the implications of this sudden, unwanted attention. His quiet life of careful routines and protected privacy was about to change, and he wasn't ready for it. His phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Isabella. "Eli, I'm so sorry. The video wasn't supposed to go public. Please call me when you can." The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, warming the room, but Eli felt a chill settle over him as he watched his hidden gift become a viral sensation, one share at a time. Maya squeezed his shoulder. "I think we need new pancakes," she said softly, trying to make him smile. But Eli just stared at his phone, watching as his private world crumbled with each new notification, each new share, each new comment from strangers who thought they had discovered something wonderful, never knowing they were witnessing one man's quiet tribute to love and loss. The morning sun barely warmed the polished marble floors of the Lakeside Performing Arts Center as Eli pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway. His phone buzzed again in his pocket, the 10th time that hour. He'd turned off notifications after the flood of messages started last night, but they kept coming anyway. The clip of him humming while mopping had somehow leaked from Isabella's private chat. Now it was everywhere. The janitor with the golden voice, that's what they were calling him. Some of the comments were kind, full of wonder and support. Others made his stomach turn. Miss Patterson, Victor Halstead's secretary, appeared around the corner. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. "Mr. Warren? Mr. Halstead would like to see you in his office." Her tone was clipped, professional, but her eyes held a hint of sympathy. Eli's chest tightened. He'd cleaned these halls for 5 years without ever being called to the chairman's office. "Now?" "Right away, please." He followed her past the practice rooms and through the administrative wing, where crystal awards lined the walls in spotless cases. Cases he polished every Tuesday. The nameplate on the heavy wooden door read, "Victor Halstead, Board Chairman," in gleaming gold letters. Inside, Victor sat behind his massive desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he studied something on his tablet. He didn't look up when Eli entered. "Sit down, Warren." Victor gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Eli lowered himself carefully onto the edge of the seat, conscious of his work uniform against the expensive leather. The room smelled of cedar and old money. "I assume you're aware of the situation that's developed." Victor finally looked up, removing his glasses with deliberate slowness. "This video of you has caused quite a stir." "Yes, sir. I didn't mean for." Victor held up a hand. "The board is concerned. We've built this center's reputation on excellence, professionalism, and standards. High standards." He emphasized the last two words. "We can't have our maintenance staff becoming social media sensations. It sends the wrong message." Eli's face burned. "I was just doing my job, sir. Cleaning the stage like always." "Were you? Because it looked to me like you were performing. On our stage. After hours." Victor's voice carried a sharp edge. "That's not what we pay you for, Warren." "No, sir." "And now, Ms. Marquez has apparently invited you to participate in some sort of community outreach?" Victor's lip curled slightly. "That won't be necessary. We have trained professionals for those events." Eli's hands gripped his knees under the desk. She thought it might help with the center's connection to the community. "The community?" Victor laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "This is a world-class performing arts center, not a church basement talent show. We have standards to maintain, reputations to protect." He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "Here's what's going to happen. You can accept a small part in the chorus. Off stage, no press, no additional compensation beyond your regular wages. Or we can avoid any further distractions and make some staffing changes. Your choice." The threat hung in the air between them. Eli thought of Maya, of their modest apartment, of the bills that barely got paid each month on his custodian's salary. "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Victor's eyes were cold. "Because let me be perfectly clear. Janitors belong in the hallways, not in the spotlight. Know your place, Warren. That's all I'm saying." Eli stood slowly, his legs feeling heavy. "Yes, sir. Is there anything else?" "No, just remember, this center has survived for 50 years by maintaining certain standards. Don't make me enforce them more." Directly. Victor picked up his glasses again, clearly dismissing him. The walk home seemed longer than usual that evening. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalks of their neighborhood, so different from the gleaming marble halls he'd left behind. Eli's mind churned with Victor's words, each step heavy with the weight of the choice before him. He found Maya at the kitchen table, surrounded by homework and a half-eaten sandwich. She looked up eagerly when he entered. "Dad, I saw the video. Why didn't you tell me you were going to sing with Ms. Marquez?" Eli tried to smile, but it felt forced. "It was just a small thing, sweetheart. Nothing special." "Nothing special? Dad, you're all over social media. My friends at school were talking about it all day." She paused, studying his face. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" He sank into the chair across from her, looking at this wonderful, perceptive daughter who could read him so well. "The board chairman called me in today. He wasn't very happy about the video." Maya's face fell. "But why? You sounded amazing." "It's complicated, baby." Eli reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Sometimes opportunities that seem perfect just aren't meant to be. They can't stop you from singing, can they?" Eli thought of Victor's thinly veiled threats, of bills and responsibilities, of the precarious balance they maintained. "They can't stop me from singing," he said carefully. "But they can make things difficult if I don't play by their rules." Maya's brow furrowed. "That's not fair." "No," Eli agreed quietly. "It's not." He looked around their small kitchen, at the photos on the fridge, at the life they'd built together. "But we've got to be smart about this. That opportunity. It might already be slipping away." Dawn crept through the kitchen window as Eli knelt beside his favorite armchair, hands clasped tight. The worn fabric still held a hint of Sarah's perfume, even after all these years. Maya's backpack sat ready by the door. She was still asleep upstairs. "Lord," he whispered, "I don't know what you're doing here. This attention. It's not what I wanted." His fingers traced the familiar pattern on the armrest. Sarah always said you had a plan, but—" The kitchen clock ticked steadily in the silence. Outside, early morning traffic hummed past their modest home. Eli's work uniform hung pressed and ready on a hook by the back door, the same uniform he'd worn for 5 years without anyone giving him a second glance. Until now. His phone lay face down on the coffee table, still buzzing occasionally with notifications. He hadn't slept much, tossing and turning as comments from the viral video played in his mind. Some called him inspiring. Others suggested he stick to his mop. "Give me wisdom," he prayed. "Show me how to protect Maya through this. She's all I've got." Footsteps creaked on the stairs, and Maya appeared in her favorite penguin pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Dad, you're up early." "Just thinking, sweetheart." Eli stood, knees protesting slightly. "How about some breakfast? We've got time for pancakes." Maya's face lit up. "Blueberry? Is there any other kind?" He pulled out the mixing bowl, grateful for the distraction. As he measured flour and milk, Maya settled at the kitchen counter with her math homework. "Dad?" She didn't look up from her equations. "Jennifer showed me the video yesterday, the one of you singing." Eli's hand stilled over the bowl. "Oh? You sound beautiful." Her voice was soft. "Like when you used to sing to Mom." The measuring cup trembled slightly in his grip. He set it down carefully. "That was a long time ago, baby." "But you could sing again." Now she did look up, her eyes bright with hope. "That famous lady thinks so too." "It's complicated, Maya." He poured batter onto the griddle, watching bubbles form and pop. "Sometimes grown-up things are messy." "Is it because of what Mr. Halstead said?" Eli turned sharply. "What do you know about that?" Maya shrugged, but her shoulders were tense. "I heard you on the phone last night. You sounded upset." The pancakes sizzled, nearly burning. Eli flipped them quickly, buying time to steady his voice. "Mr. Halstead, he's just trying to keep things running smoothly at the center. That's his job." "But it's not fair." Maya's pencil clattered to the counter. "You work so hard, and your voice is amazing, and they're being mean just because." "Maya." Eli's tone was gentle but firm. "Sometimes life isn't fair. But we handle it with grace, remember? Like Mom taught us." She slumped in her chair. "I know. I wish people could see who you really are." Eli slid a plate of pancakes in front of her, then cupped her cheek in his palm. "As long as you see me, that's all that matters." After dropping Maya at school, Eli parked in his usual spot behind the art center. The morning air was crisp, carrying the first hint of autumn. He found himself humming that same lullaby as he gathered his cleaning supplies, then caught himself and stopped. The employee entrance felt different somehow. Faces turned his way, other maintenance workers, ushers setting up for morning tours, even a few musicians arriving early to practice. Some smiled. Others quickly looked away. "Eli!" Isabella's voice rang out across the lobby. She hurried toward him, elegant even in casual rehearsal clothes. "I've been trying to reach you." "Miss Marquez." He nodded politely, aware of watching eyes. "I'm sorry about the video. I know it's causing problems." "Please, it's Isabella." She touched his arm lightly. "And don't apologize. That clip is opening doors, not closing them. The community outreach program would love to have you participate." Mr. Halstead made it clear that wouldn't be appropriate. Isabella's eyes flashed. "Victor Halstead doesn't own this center or your voice. We just finished a board meeting, and I made my position very clear. You have a gift, Eli. Using it wouldn't just inspire others. It would honor your wife's memory." Eli stiffened. "How do you know about Sarah?" "Reverend Lila mentioned you used to sing in her choir. She told me what happened." Isabella's voice softened. "I lost my mother young. Music helped me hold on to her memory." Down the hall, a door opened. Victor Halstead emerged with several board members, their voices carrying across the marble floor. Eli gripped his mop handle tighter. "Think about it," Isabella said, quickly. "The community program meets Tuesday evenings at the church. No pressure, no spotlight, just people sharing music." She smiled. Maya would be welcome too. Victor's group drew closer. Eli could feel the chairman's sharp gaze. "I'll think about it," he said quietly. Isabella squeezed his arm once more before walking away, her heels clicking against the floor. Eli watched her go, then pushed his cart toward the first practice room of the day. As he cleaned, he thought about Maya's face at breakfast, about Sarah's voice joining his on Sunday mornings, back when the world felt whole, about the way Isabella's eyes had lit up when she first heard him sing. He thought about Victor Halstead's thinly veiled threats and the comments calling him an attention seeker, about bills to pay and a daughter to protect. But mostly, he thought about that simple lullaby, the one his mother had sung to him, the one he'd sung to Sarah, the one Sarah had sung to Maya, the melody that had started all this. By the time his shift ended, his hands were steady and his heart was quiet. He knew what he had to do. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Isabella. "Count me in for Tuesday. Maya too, if that's still okay." Her response came instantly. "It's more than okay. It's perfect." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of the Lakeside Performing Arts Center's administrative office as Eli stared at the paper in his hands. His weekly schedule, normally filled with 5 full 8-hour shifts, now showed only 3 days. The reduction hit him like a punch to the gut. Mrs. Chen, the elderly HR clerk, gave him an apologetic look. "Budget cuts," she said softly, though they both knew better. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Warren." Eli carefully folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. "Thank you for letting me know," he said, his voice steady despite the worry churning in his stomach. The lost hours would make things tight, real tight. Back in the maintenance closet, Eli methodically arranged his cleaning supplies, trying to calculate numbers in his head: mortgage, utilities, groceries, Maya's school supplies. He'd have to dip into their small emergency fund, the one he'd been building up for Maya's college. The sound of students leaving the nearby high school drifted through the building's open windows. Maya would be home soon. Eli grabbed his mop and headed toward the east wing, determined to keep busy. Later that evening, Maya sat at their small kitchen table, working on her homework while Eli prepared dinner. He'd managed to stretch one chicken breast into a stir-fry with plenty of vegetables, enough for leftovers tomorrow. "Dad?" Maya looked up from her textbook. "Can I get new strings for my guitar? Mrs. Rodriguez says I'm ready for the advanced class." Eli's hand paused over the pan. "Let me think about it, sweetie. Maybe next month?" He stirred the vegetables with extra attention, avoiding her questioning look. "Is everything okay?" Maya asked, her voice carrying that careful tone that always reminded him how perceptive she was. Eli turned and smiled, making sure it reached his eyes. "Everything's fine, just trying not to burn dinner." He reached over and tugged one of her braids playfully. "Tell me more about this advanced class." As Maya launched into an excited explanation, Eli listened while serving their plates, grateful she couldn't see the schedule paper burning a hole in his pocket. The next morning arrived early. Very early. The stars still dotted the sky as Eli pulled into the Arts Center parking lot at 5:30 a.m. Isabella had arranged for them to use the rehearsal space before his shift started and before her own packed schedule began. The building felt different in the pre-dawn quiet. Eli's footsteps echoed in the empty hallways as he made his way to the small practice room. Through the door's window, he could see Isabella already there, sorting through sheet music at the piano. "Good morning," she said warmly as he entered. Her usual stage makeup was absent, and she wore a simple sweater instead of her performance attire. It made her seem more approachable, more real. "Morning," Eli replied, setting down his thermos of coffee. "I appreciate you doing this so early." Isabella waved off his thanks. "This is actually my favorite time to practice. The world feels more honest before sunrise." She patted the piano bench beside her. "Shall we warm up?" For the next 20 minutes, Isabella led him through vocal exercises he hadn't done since his church choir days. Simple scales turned into more complex patterns, his voice growing stronger with each repetition. "Now," Isabella said, turning to face him fully, "that lullaby I heard you singing, would you share it with me again?" Eli hesitated. He'd hummed it to Sarah during her pregnancy, then to Maya every night when she was small. It felt private, almost sacred. "Trust me," Isabella said gently, reading his expression. "Sometimes the songs closest to our hearts are the ones that reach others most deeply." Eli closed his eyes and began to hum, then gradually added the words. It was a simple melody about stars guiding loved ones home. As his voice filled the small room, he felt something shift inside him, like a door long rusted shut finally starting to open. "Keep going," Isabella encouraged softly, adding gentle piano chords beneath his voice. The melody grew stronger, his baritone resonating with a depth that surprised him. When he reached the final verse, Isabella's soprano joined in harmony, their voices weaving together in the quiet morning air. As the last note faded, Eli opened his eyes. The practice room seemed to glow in the first rays of dawn streaming through the windows. Isabella sat silently for a moment, her hands still resting on the piano keys. "Eli," she said finally, "do you have any idea what you have? That wasn't just singing, that was pure music." He shifted uncomfortably under her intense gaze. "It's just an old lullaby." "No," she shook her head firmly. "What you have is a gift. One that's been waiting patiently all these years while you worked so hard taking care of everyone else." She placed a hand on his arm. "Your voice has more strength than you know. The question is, are you ready to really use it?" The morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, casting colorful patterns across the worn wooden pews. Reverend Lila Clark stood beside Eli in the empty sanctuary, her posture straight despite her years. "First things first," she said, placing a hand on Eli's shoulder. "You're too tense. Your body is your instrument, and right now you're holding it like you're ready for battle." Eli tried to relax his shoulders, but they crept right back up. He'd been up since dawn doing his reduced cleaning shift, and his muscles felt wound tight as springs. "Here, watch me," Reverend Lila demonstrated, taking a deep breath that seemed to start at her toes. "Breathing for singing isn't like normal breathing. You need to fill your whole body, like you're inflating from the bottom up." Eli attempted to copy her, but his breath came out shaky and shallow. "No, no." Lila shook her head. "Put your hand here." She pressed his palm against his diaphragm. "Feel how I do it." She took another breath, and Eli felt the expansion under his hand. "That's where your power comes from," she explained. "Not from your throat, from deep in your core. Try again." Eli closed his eyes, trying to focus. This time, he felt the breath move lower, filling his chest from the bottom. "Better," Lila nodded. "Now again, but slower. Count to 4 as you breathe in, hold for 2, then release for 6 counts." They practiced this for several minutes, the only sound in the church their measured breathing and the distant ticking of the ancient wall clock. "My wife," Eli said suddenly, his voice quiet in the sacred space. "Sarah used to tell me I was holding my breath too much, when I was worried about bills, or when Maya was sick as a baby." Lila's eyes softened. "Sarah was right. We hold our breath when we're trying to hold ourselves together. But music needs us to let go, to trust the air will be there." She moved to the piano, her sensible shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. "Now, let's put that breathing to work. We'll start with something simple, Amazing Grace." Eli recognized the opening notes as Lila played them. It was Sarah's favorite hymn, the one they'd sung at her funeral. His throat tightened. "Remember the breathing?" Lila reminded him gently, noting his tension. "Let the air support you." Eli took another deep breath, feeling it fill his diaphragm as she'd taught him. The first few notes came out uncertain, wavering. "Stop!" Lila held up her hand. "You're singing from here." She touched her throat. "Sing from here." She pressed his diaphragm again. The voice should float on the breath, like a leaf on a stream. Again. They worked through the first verse several times. With each attempt, Eli's voice grew steadier, rounder, more confident. The sound began to fill the church, resonating off the high ceiling and wooden beams. "Now," Lila said, "let's work on your posture. Stand like you're a king, addressing his subjects. Eli shifted uncomfortably. I'm just a janitor, Reverend. Lila fixed him with a stern look. You're a child of God with a gift he gave you. Stand like you believe that. She adjusted his stance. Shoulders back, chest open, feet planted firmly. Your body needs to be like a well-built house. Strong foundation, open spaces for the sound to fill. As they continued practicing, neither noticed the church doors quietly opening. Mrs. Thompson, who arranged the altar flowers, slipped in. Then Mr. Garcia, who helped with maintenance. A few more elderly parishioners, who often came early for afternoon Bible study, gathered silently in the back pews. One more time, Lila said, her fingers finding the opening chords. Remember everything we've practiced. Breathe from your center. Stand with dignity. Let the sound float. Eli closed his eyes and began to sing. This time, his voice rang out clear and strong, filling every corner of the sanctuary with rich, warm tones. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. That saved a wretch like me. The notes soared up to the rafters, supported by Lila's gentle accompaniment. As he reached the final verse, the scattered parishioners in the back began to join in, their voices rising in harmony with his. Eli's eyes opened in surprise, but Lila nodded for him to continue. The impromptu choir grew as more people slipped into the church, drawn by the music. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright, shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun. As the last notes faded away, the small congregation burst into applause. Mrs. Thompson wiped tears from her eyes, and Mr. Garcia called out, "Amen!" Eli felt his cheeks grow warm, but for once he didn't shrink from the attention. The music had lifted something heavy from his shoulders, if only for a moment. Now that, Lila said with satisfaction, is what happens when you let yourself stand tall and breathe properly. She patted his arm. We'll make a proper singer of you yet. The bell above Charlie's diner jingled as Eli and Maya stepped inside on Saturday morning. The familiar scent of coffee and maple syrup wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Maya's eyes brightened at the weekend treat, their special father-daughter breakfast tradition whenever Eli could manage it. Well, if it isn't our local celebrity, Charlie himself called from behind the counter, his round face beaming. The diner owner's white apron was dusted with flour, and his salt and pepper mustache twitched with pleasure. Maya ducked her head shyly, but Eli noticed the small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It was different from the usual embarrassment she showed about his job as a janitor. This time, there was a hint of pride in her expression. "Morning, Charlie," Eli said quietly, nodding to the owner as he guided Maya to their usual booth by the window. The vinyl seats squeaked as they slid in, and the morning sun warmed their faces through the glass. Mrs. Peterson, a regular customer who always occupied the corner table, looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Eli Warren, I was at church yesterday morning. Why didn't you tell us you had such a gift? I haven't heard Amazing Grace sung like that since my Harold was alive." Eli felt his cheeks warm. "Just trying something new, Mrs. Peterson." "Something new?" Charlie's wife Rita emerged from the kitchen, coffee pot in hand. "More like something you've been hiding under a bushel all these years. My sister called me from 3 towns over about some video of you singing." Maya picked up a menu she'd memorized years ago, using it as a shield. But Eli could see her peeking over the top, watching the interactions with growing interest. Rita poured their coffee. Regular for Eli, hot chocolate for Maya, without even asking. "The usual for you two? Blueberry pancakes for Miss Maya, and chicken fried steak for Dad?" "Actually," Maya spoke up, lowering her menu slightly, "can I try the Belgian waffle today, with extra whipped cream?" "Look at you, branching out," Rita winked. "Must be taking after your daddy, trying new things." The diner had filled up while they talked, and Eli noticed more faces turning their way, not with the judgment he'd feared, but with genuine warmth. Mr. Rodriguez, who owned the hardware store, raised his coffee mug in greeting. The Henderson twins, who usually kept to themselves, smiled and waved from their counter seats. "Your voice really is something special, Mr. Warren," said Jenny, the young waitress who'd just started last month. She set down their water glasses with careful precision. "My grandma was at the church rehearsal too, said it made her cry, in a good way." Maya sat up straighter, her menu finally lowered completely. "He used to sing to me all the time when I was little," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Mom taught him the lullaby." The diner grew quieter at the mention of Eli's late wife. He reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand, grateful for her willingness to share that precious memory. Rita returned with their breakfast, the waffle piled high with whipped cream and fresh strawberries, arranged in a pattern that looked like a music note. "On the house today," she insisted when Eli started to protest. "We're just happy to finally hear your voice, Eli. This town needs more beauty in it." As they ate, more customers filtered in and out. Each one seemed to have a kind word or a story about someone who'd seen the video or been at church. Eli noticed Maya sitting taller with each comment, her shoulders relaxing, her smile growing more natural. "You know what this place needs?" Charlie announced suddenly, pulling something from behind the counter. It was a framed photograph. Someone had captured the moment at church when Eli and Isabella had finished their duet. In the picture, Eli stood straight and tall, his eyes closed in song, while Isabella looked at him with genuine respect. Charlie cleared his throat. "Got this from the church newsletter. Think it belongs right here." He moved to the wall of local photos, Little League champions, graduating classes, weather disasters survived, and community triumphs celebrated. With careful movements, Charlie hung the photo right in the center of the wall. Beneath it, he pinned a small, handwritten sign, "Our Janitor, Our Tenor." The diner burst into applause. Maya's eyes shone with unshed tears as she looked at the photo of her father, finally being recognized not for what he did for a living, but for who he truly was. Eli stared at the image, remembering how it felt in that moment. Not like a janitor trying to be something he wasn't, but like a man reclaiming a part of himself he'd thought was lost forever. The man his daughter needed him to be. The man his wife had always believed he could be. Charlie stepped back to admire his handiwork, then turned to Eli and Maya's table. "Perfect spot, don't you think? Right where everyone can see it." Maya nodded, wiping quickly at her eyes. "Perfect," she echoed, reaching for her father's hand again. This time, her grip was strong and sure, like she was holding on to something precious that she never wanted to let go. The morning sun caught the glass of the frame, making it gleam like a spotlight on the wall of Charlie's diner, where a janitor's hidden gift had finally found its place in the heart of their small town. The marble floors of the Lakeside Performing Arts Center's executive wing felt different under Eli's work boots. Their polished surface, usually encountered with his mop and bucket, now stretched before him like a frozen lake as he made his way to the boardroom. The morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes in golden beams. Two security guards flanked the heavy oak doors, their faces carefully blank as they waved him through. Inside, the boardroom was all dark wood and leather chairs, with a view of the lake that gave the center its name. Victor Halstead sat at the head of the long table, flanked by two men in expensive suits who had spread various documents before them. "Mr. Warren," Victor said, rising with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." Eli settled into one of the leather chairs, conscious of his work uniform and calloused hands. He'd come straight from his morning cleaning shift, and the smell of lemon disinfectant clung faintly to his clothes. "These gentlemen," Victor gestured to the suits, "are Mr. Peterson and Mr. Romano from our legal department. They've prepared some paperwork we'd like to discuss with you." One of the lawyers, Peterson, cleared his throat. "Mr. Warren, the board has prepared a generous offer. We understand there's been some attention regarding your singing. Social media can be quite unpredictable," Victor added smoothly. "We want to ensure everything moves forward in a way that benefits everyone." Romano slid a thick document across the table. "This agreement would allow you to participate in the gala in a carefully structured way. You'd join the backstage chorus for one number, no solo parts. But still, part of the performance." Eli's fingers rested on the edge of the paper, but he didn't pick it up. "And what else?" In exchange, Peterson continued, you'd agree to sign over all publicity rights regarding your story. No interviews, no social media posts about your involvement, no public statements about the Arts Center or the circumstances that brought you here. It's really quite standard, Victor interjected, leaning forward. Many of our performers signed similar agreements. Think of it as protecting the integrity of the Arts Center's image. Eli finally picked up the document, his eyes scanning the dense legal text. The word prohibited appeared frequently, along with phrases like monetary penalties and breach of contract. There's also a modest stipend included, Romano added. $500 for your participation, separate from your regular wages. Victor's smile tightened. We believe this is more than fair, considering your position here. It allows you to be part of the performance while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. Eli set the document down carefully, smoothing it with one work-roughened hand. The morning sun had crept higher, warming his shoulder through his uniform shirt. He thought of Maya, of the pride in her eyes when she'd heard him sing at church. He thought of Isabella's genuine encouragement, of Reverend Lila's words about not burying his gift. Mr. Warren? Victor prompted, his tone growing sharp. This offer won't remain open indefinitely. We need to finalize the gala program. Eli stood slowly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. Thank you for the offer, he said quietly, his voice steady. But I can't sign this. Mr. Warren, Peterson started. Perhaps you don't understand. I understand just fine, Eli interrupted, gentle but firm. You want me to hide, to pretend I'm not really there like I do every other day with my mop and bucket. But my daughter, he paused, gathering his thoughts. My daughter deserves to see her father stand up straight. Victor's facade cracked slightly, a flash of anger crossing his features. This is a mistake, Warren. Think about your position here. Your hours have already been cut? Eli finished. I know. And I'll keep cleaning these floors as long as you'll let me, because that work matters too. But I won't sign away my voice. Not again. He turned toward the door, his work boots silent on the thick carpet. Behind him, chairs scraped as the lawyers gathered their papers, murmuring in low voices. Eli's hand was on the doorknob when Victor called out one last time. You're making a serious error in judgment. This center has standards to maintain. Eli paused, his back straight. Yes, sir, he said quietly. It does. Then he walked out, leaving the thick stack of papers untouched on the gleaming table. The marble hallway stretched before him, sunlight making patterns on its polished surface. His next shift started in 20 minutes. There would be floors to mop, trash to collect, and bathrooms to clean. But for the first time in years, Eli Warren walked those halls with his head held high, even as uncertainty wrapped around his shoulders like a heavy cloak. The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows of First Methodist, painting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden pews. Eli stood near the altar, his hands clasped behind his back, watching Isabella adjust the ancient piano bench where Reverend Lila sat ready to accompany them. Maya perched in the front row, nervously smoothing the paper in her hands. Her grandmother's cream-colored shawl draped over her shoulders, making her look older than her 14 years. The familiar scent of wood polish and old hymnals filled the air as community members filed in quietly, filling the church pews one by one. Remember to breathe from here, Isabella said softly, placing her hand just below Eli's ribs. Let the air fill your whole chest, like we practiced. Eli nodded, trying to calm his racing heart. The church felt safe, familiar, but singing in front of people still made his palms sweat. He watched as Mrs. Hartley from the diner settled into her usual spot, followed by a group of veterans who normally attended the early service. Even Jonas from the Arts Center sound crew had slipped in at the back, looking uncomfortable in a pressed shirt. Before we begin, Reverend Lila announced, standing to address the gathering, Maya Warren has something she'd like to share. Maya rose slowly, clutching her paper. The shawl caught the light as she made her way to the simple wooden podium. Her voice trembled slightly as she began. "This is called Mom's Lullaby," she said, then took a deep breath. "Your voice still echoes in the quiet nights. When Dad thinks I'm sleeping, but I hear him sing. The same sweet tune you used to bring. Soft as wings, warm as morning light. He thinks I don't remember how you'd sway. But I do, Mom, I do." And now he stands before these people, your song in his hands, teaching me brave has its own way. Maya's voice grew stronger with each line, and Eli felt tears pricking at his eyes. He hadn't known she remembered so much about Sarah's singing. Isabella squeezed his arm gently as Maya finished her poem to soft applause and returned to her seat, face flushed but smiling. "Thank you, Maya," Reverend Lila said warmly, turning to the piano. "Now, shall we?" The opening notes of Amazing Grace filled the church. Eli closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of Isabella's presence beside him. They had practiced this dozens of times in the empty church at dawn, but now the pews were full of faces he knew: the grocery store clerk, his elderly neighbors, Maya's science teacher. Isabella's soprano rose first, pure and clear as morning light. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Eli's baritone joined on the second line, tentative at first, then growing stronger. That saved a wretch like me. Their voices wove together, his deep tones supporting her soaring melody. The harmony they created filled every corner of the church, making the stained glass seem to vibrate with color. Mrs. Hartley dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, and several of the veterans sat straighter in their pews. As they moved into the second verse, Eli felt something shift inside him. The nervousness melted away, replaced by a sense of rightness he hadn't felt since singing with Sarah. Isabella's voice lifted his higher, their shared music becoming something greater than either could achieve alone. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. The congregation joined softly on the third verse, their voices rising in gentle support. Maya's clear young voice carried from the front pew, her eyes shining with pride as she watched her father sing. Even Jonas in the back was singing now, his earlier discomfort forgotten. When they reached the final verse, Isabella stepped back slightly, gesturing for Eli to take the lead. For a moment, panic fluttered in his chest, but then he caught Maya's encouraging smile and remembered Sarah's favorite words. "Sing like nobody's listening. Love like you've never been hurt." His voice filled the church alone. "When we've been there 10,000 years." The congregation fell silent, letting his baritone soar. Isabella joined again for the last two lines, their voices blending in perfect harmony as the final notes faded into reverent silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Mrs. Hartley stood, tears streaming down her face, and began to applaud. The entire congregation rose as one, their applause thundering in the small church. Maya ran to hug her father, burying her face in his chest as he held her close. Reverend Lila made her way to the podium, waiting for the applause to quiet. "Before we close," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I've just received word that an anonymous donor has pledged to establish a new scholarship fund at Central High School." She smiled directly at Maya. "This fund will support students interested in both arts and sciences, a bridge between melody and mathematics, you might say." Fresh applause erupted as Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. Eli hugged her tighter, his heart too full for words. Isabella beamed at them both, her own eyes glistening with happy tears. In that moment, surrounded by the love of his community and holding his daughter close, Eli felt Sarah's presence more strongly than he had in years. He could almost hear her whisper, "See? Your voice was never lost. It was just waiting for the right moment to sing again." The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Eli's phone buzzed on his nightstand. He squinted at the screen, careful not to wake Maya in the next room. Another email from WKLD Radio, the third station this week, asking for an interview. Eli rubbed his tired eyes and slipped out of bed. In the kitchen, he started the coffee maker and pulled out Maya's favorite cereal bowl. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Mrs. Chen at the local news station. "They just won't quit," he muttered, setting his phone face down on the counter. The coffee maker gurgled as Eli prepared Maya's lunch. He carefully wrapped her sandwich in wax paper, the way Sarah used to do it, and tucked in a little note like always. "Have a great day, sweetheart. Love, Dad." The doorbell rang. Eli frowned. Nobody ever came by this early. Through the peephole, he saw Isabella standing on his porch, holding 2 paper cups from the diner. Her usual elegant performance attire was replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. "I brought reinforcements," she said when he opened the door, holding up the cups. "I heard about all the interview requests." "News travels fast," Eli said, accepting one of the coffees. "Come in. Maya's not up yet." They sat at his small kitchen table, the morning silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. "Victor cornered me yesterday," Isabella said quietly. "He's not happy about all this attention you're getting." Eli's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "What did he say?" "He thinks it's disrupting the center's image." His words, not mine. She shook her head. "But the community doesn't agree. Have you seen the diner's wall?" "Hard to miss," Eli said, managing a small smile. Mrs. Patterson had arranged a whole collection of local newspaper clippings around his photo, proud as could be. The sound of Maya's bedroom door opening made them both look up. She appeared in her school uniform, hair still messy from sleep. "Miss Isabella," Maya's face lit up. "Are you having breakfast with us?" "Just coffee today, sweetheart," Isabella said. "But I heard you've been practicing your poem for the concert?" While Maya excitedly recited her latest revision, Eli's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Victor Halstead himself. "Mandatory staff meeting, 9 a.m. sharp." Eli's stomach tightened. He'd learned to read between the lines with Victor's mandatory meetings. At precisely 9 a.m., Eli sat in the staff room, still in his janitor's uniform. Victor stood at the front, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his face a mask of professional concern. "Recent events have brought unexpected attention to our institution," Victor began, his eyes settling on Eli. "While community interest is appreciated, we must maintain our standards and proper boundaries." A few other maintenance workers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They'd all seen the tension building. "Therefore, effective immediately, all staff members must decline media requests without prior board approval." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We wouldn't want to misrepresent our establishment." After the meeting, Eli headed to the supply closet to start his rounds. The door was locked. "Sorry, Warren," Victor said, appearing behind him. "We've had to implement some scheduling changes. Your section won't need attention until this afternoon. But I always clean the practice rooms in the morning." "Times change," Victor cut him off smoothly. "We're streamlining operations, you understand." Throughout the day, Eli found more locked doors, more schedule changes, more subtle ways Victor was boxing him in. The practice room where he and Isabella rehearsed was suddenly under maintenance. The back hallway where he used to warm up his voice was now staff access only. When lunch break came, Eli retreated to his car, needing a moment of peace. His phone showed 3 more interview requests, 2 supportive messages from church members, and 1 text from Isabella. "Don't let him win." The afternoon dragged on with more of Victor's careful manipulations. Every time Eli turned around, there was another restriction, another closed door, another subtle reminder that he was just the janitor who'd gotten too big for his boots. At the end of his shift, Eli stopped by the office to pick up his paycheck. The envelope felt thinner than usual. He waited until he was in his car to open it, and his heart sank as he read the numbers. 20 hours cut. No explanation, no warning. The slash in his hours was hidden in the fine print of his weekly schedule, carefully structured to seem like normal operational changes. But Eli knew better. This was Victor's way of tightening the screws, trying to force him back into his proper place. He sat in his car, staring at the paycheck, calculating bills in his head. The mortgage, Maya's school supplies, groceries. His throat felt tight, but he refused to let the worry show when he got home. Maya was waiting at the kitchen table, homework spread out before her, working on her poem for the concert. Her face brightened when he walked in. "Dad, I changed the ending. Want to hear it?" Eli tucked the paycheck into his pocket, pushing aside his concerns. "Always, sweetheart, always." Jonas Reed slammed his toolbox onto the metal workbench, making the spare light bulbs rattle. Another morning, another day of watching everyone fawn over the janitor who got lucky. He yanked open the circuit panel with more force than necessary, checking the connections for the upcoming rehearsal. "Did you see the newspaper?" Tom from lighting called down from the catwalk. "Our singing janitor made the front page again." Jonas grunted, pretending to be absorbed in his work. Of course he'd seen it. How could he miss it? Eli Warren's face was plastered everywhere these days. The local news, social media, even the bulletin board in the break room. 20 years I've been running sound in this place," Jonas muttered, mostly to himself. 20 years of perfect cues, perfect levels, perfect everything. Not one mistake. And what do I get? A pat on the back at Christmas. He moved through the wings, checking microphone connections with sharp, angry movements. The stage was empty except for a few chairs set up for afternoon rehearsal. His footsteps echoed in the quiet space that used to feel like home. "Morning, Jonas," Isabella called out as she crossed the stage with her sheet music. "How are the sound levels today?" "Same as always," he replied flatly. "Though I suppose they need to be extra special now that we've got our star janitor performing." Isabella paused, frowning slightly. "Eli's voice is a gift. The whole community is excited about." "A gift?" Jonas scoffed. "He pushes a mop around. Some of us actually trained for years to work in theater. But sure, let's all pretend the custodian is suddenly Pavarotti." "That's not fair," Isabella said quietly. "He's not trying to take anything away from anyone." Jonas watched her walk away, his jaw clenched tight. The morning light streaming through the high windows caught the dust motes dancing in the air. Dust that Eli would probably clean later, in between his precious rehearsals. The sound booth felt smaller than usual as Jonas settled into his chair. He pulled up the mixing software, adjusting levels with practiced precision. Through the glass, he could see Victor Halstead entering the theater, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the worn stage floor. The board chairman made his way up to the booth, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "Jonas, just the person I wanted to see." "Mr. Halstead." Jonas straightened in his chair. "Can I help you with something?" Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you've been here quite a while. Dedicated, professional. The kind of person who understands how things should be done properly." "Yes, sir." Jonas felt a flutter of pride, quickly followed by a familiar bitterness, though lately it seems experience doesn't count for much around here. Victor nodded slowly. "This situation with the janitor, it's becoming a distraction. Bad for morale. Bad for the center's reputation." Jonas swiveled his chair to face Victor fully. "Couldn't agree more, sir, but what can we do? Everyone's fallen for this fairy tale story." Victor pulled up a spare chair, his voice dropping lower. "You handle all the sound recordings for rehearsals, correct? Including the backup tracks?" "Every single one," Jonas confirmed. "Been doing it since we went digital." "And I imagine," Victor continued carefully, "that with your expertise, you could adjust certain recordings? Perhaps make them less flattering to certain parties?" Jonas's fingers stilled on the mixing board. "You mean doctor the tapes?" "I mean, protect this institution's standards." Victor's tone was smooth as polished marble. "We can't have untrained amateurs diminishing the quality of our performances. Think of your own position. Do you want to be known as the sound engineer for a viral novelty act?" The words hit home, stirring up all the resentment Jonas had been nursing. He thought of his mother, asking why he wasn't famous like that nice janitor man, of the local paper writing about the discovery of hidden talent without a single mention of the technical crew that made every performance possible. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Jonas asked, his voice rough. Victor smiled, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Nothing dramatic, just enough to suggest that perhaps our maintenance staff member isn't quite the natural talent everyone believes. I'm sure you can handle it." discreetly. Jonas stared at the envelope Victor placed on the mixing board. He thought of 20 years of perfect sound cues, of watching from the booth while others took their bows, of being invisible except when something went wrong. It would need to be subtle, Jonas said slowly. Nothing too obvious. Of course. Victor stood, straightening his tie. I trust your judgment completely. And Jonas? The board won't forget who helped maintain our standards. After Victor left, Jonas sat alone in the booth, staring at the envelope. Through the glass, he could see Eli entering with his mop bucket, head bobbing slightly to whatever song was playing in his mind. The sight made Jonas's stomach twist. Yeah, he muttered, pulling up the rehearsal recordings. I can handle it. The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window of the Warrens' small apartment, catching the steam rising from Eli's coffee mug. Maya sat across from him at their scratched wooden table, picking at her bowl of cereal while scrolling through her phone. The familiar morning routine felt comfortable even with the growing pressure of the upcoming gala performance. Dad? Maya's voice cracked slightly. You need to see this. Eli looked up from buttering his toast, noting the worry in his daughter's eyes. What is it, sweetheart? Maya held out her phone, her hand trembling slightly. On the screen was a video clip from their recent church rehearsal. The footage showed Eli singing alongside Isabella, but something was wrong. The audio seemed disconnected from his movements, making it appear as if he wasn't really singing at all. The comments are really mean, Maya said quietly, pulling her oversized sweater tighter around herself. They're saying you're fake, that you're just moving your mouth while Isabella does all the work. Eli's stomach clenched as he took the phone, scrolling through the hostile comments beneath the video. Fraud. Wannabe. Knew it was too good to be true. Each word felt like a physical blow. But it's not true. Maya pushed her cereal bowl away, her voice rising. I was there. Everyone at church heard you sing for real. Eli set the phone down carefully, trying to keep his expression neutral for Maya's sake. Some people just want to believe the worst, baby girl. We know the truth. It's not fair. Maya's eyes welled with tears. First they cut your hours, and now this? Why can't they just let you sing? Eli reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Hey now, remember what Reverend Lila always says? The truth has a way of coming to light. The rest of breakfast passed in uncomfortable silence. Eli helped Maya gather her schoolbooks, watching as she braided her hair with slightly shaky fingers. The video had shaken them both more than they wanted to admit. You've got your science club meeting after school? Eli asked, helping her with her backpack. Yeah, we're working on the robotics project. Maya managed a small smile. Mrs. Chen says I might have a shot at the state competition. That's my girl. Eli kissed the top of her head. I'll pick you up after rehearsal tonight. We can grab dinner at the diner? Maya nodded, but her smile faded as she checked her phone again. Dad, the video's getting more shares. What if everyone at school sees it? Then you hold your head high, Eli said firmly. We've got nothing to be ashamed of. After Maya left, Eli sat heavily in his worn armchair, allowing himself a moment of vulnerability now that she couldn't see. The doctored video was cruel, but it wasn't just about him anymore. Maya was getting caught in the crossfire, and that hurt worse than any personal attack. The morning crawled by as Eli went through his usual cleaning routine at the arts center. He could feel eyes on him everywhere he went, stagehands whispering, office staff quickly looking away when he passed. The video was spreading like wildfire through the local arts community. Around noon, his phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Eli, I'm so sorry about that awful video. We'll figure this out. Don't let them shake you. He was about to reply when another message came through. This one, from an unknown number. Maybe stick to pushing your mop, faker. Leave the real performing to professionals. Eli's hand tightened around the mop handle as he continued his work, trying to ignore the whispers and sideways glances. He focused on thoughts of Maya, of her pride when she heard him sing at church, of her beautiful poem about her mother. Those moments were real. No doctored video could take that away. The afternoon brought more cruel messages, and another round of hour cuts from management. Eli's shoulders grew tighter with each passing hour. But he kept working, kept his head up. He had promised Maya dinner at the diner, and he wouldn't let her down. At 3:45, his phone rang. Maya's school number. His heart jumped into his throat. "Mr. Warren?" It was Maya's guidance counselor. "Maya's quite upset. Some students were showing her some video on their phones. Perhaps you could come pick her up early?" "I'll be right there," Eli said, already reaching for his keys. He found Maya in the counselor's office, her face buried in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were red and puffy. "They were playing it at lunch," she whispered. Everyone was laughing. The drive home was quiet, Maya staring out the window while Eli tried to find the right words to comfort her. They were almost to their apartment when his phone rang again, an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Warren?" a formal voice asked. "This is Sandra Martinez, from Child Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report concerning your daughter Maya." Eli's blood ran cold. "What kind of report?" "The caller claims you've been leaving Maya alone late at night while you pursue entertainment activities. We take all reports seriously, Mr. Warren. We're actually in your neighborhood now and need to conduct an immediate welfare check." Eli's hands shook as he parked the car. "Maya, baby, I need you to listen carefully. Someone's trying to cause trouble. Some people from CPS are coming to check on us. Just tell them the truth, okay? Everything's going to be fine." Maya's eyes went wide with fear. "But you never leave me alone. Grandma Jones watches me when you work late, or I stay with Reverend Lila." "I know, sweetheart. I know." Eli tried to keep his voice steady as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. They had barely gotten inside when the knock came, 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo through their small home. Maya grabbed Eli's hand, squeezing tight as he moved to answer the door. Through the peephole, Eli could see 2 official-looking women in business attire, their badges clearly visible. His heart pounded as he reached for the doorknob, knowing this moment could change everything. Eli's ancient sedan sputtered through downtown, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The CPS visit had taken over an hour, checking Maya's room, inspecting their food supplies, questioning them separately about their daily routines. Though Mrs. Martinez had seemed satisfied with their answers, and Grandma Jones's sworn statement about childcare, precious rehearsal time had slipped away. The Arts Center parking lot was half empty when he finally pulled in, most of the day's staff already gone. Eli's work boots echoed through the empty hallway as he rushed toward the main stage. Through the heavy doors, he could hear Isabella's soprano soaring through their duet piece, without him. He slipped into the darkened auditorium, his heart sinking. The full orchestra was assembled, running through the complete program. Isabella stood center stage in rehearsal clothes, her face lined with worry as she sang their part alone. In the front row, Victor Halstead sat with perfect posture, making notes on a leather-bound clipboard. "You're very late, Mr. Warren." The stage manager's whisper made Eli jump. Jonas stood in the shadows, arms crossed. "Board doesn't like tardiness," from Temporary Talent. "There was an emergency," Eli said quietly. "My daughter." "Save it for someone who cares," Jonas smirked. "Besides, we've got the number covered. Isabella's solo version actually sounds better." On stage, Isabella hit their climactic note, the moment where their voices were supposed to blend. She glanced toward the wings, hope fading from her eyes when she saw Eli standing there too late. The orchestra finished with a flourish. In the silence that followed, Victor's voice cut through the air. "Well, that settles it. Miss Marquez, you'll perform the piece solo at the gala. Much cleaner that way." "No." Isabella's voice was firm. "This is a duet. We just need to run it once with Eli. Mr. Warren has demonstrated his unreliability." Victor stood, brushing invisible lint from his blazer. "Missing this crucial rehearsal is simply unacceptable." Eli stepped forward into the light. "Sir, there was a CPS investigation at my home. Someone made a false report." "How convenient." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Another dramatic excuse from our dramatic janitor. First the doctored video, now this. It's almost as if the universe is trying to tell us something about keeping to one's proper place. Isabella descended the stage steps, her face flushed with anger. Victor, this is ridiculous. Eli has proven himself repeatedly. One missed rehearsal doesn't erase weeks of dedication. The board has made its decision. Victor's voice hardened. Mr. Warren's presence has become a distraction. The gala is about celebrating art's excellence, not indulging amateur hour. I earned my spot, Eli said quietly, thinking of Maya's tears, of the hours of practice, of Reverend Lila's faith in him. I won't let you push me aside. Victor's laugh was cold. Let me? My dear man? You seem to have forgotten your actual position here. He pulled a paper from his clipboard. Your contract clearly states that any employee can be dismissed for conduct unbecoming. Missing mandatory rehearsal, causing public controversy, these qualify. Isabella stepped between them. If Eli doesn't perform, neither do I. I wouldn't make threats, Miss Marquez. Victor's voice dropped dangerously low. Your contract has very specific clauses about public appearances and association with controversial elements. Breaking it would be quite costly, financially and professionally. The orchestra members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, pretending not to listen. Jonas lingered by the light board, a satisfied smirk playing at his lips. This is wrong, Isabella said, her hands trembling slightly. You're punishing a man for having a genuine emergency with his child. I'm maintaining the standards of this institution. Victor turned to Eli. You are hereby banned from performing at the gala. You may return to your janitorial duties, assuming you still want employment here at all. Eli stood very still, dignity straightening his spine. He thought of Maya waiting at home with Grandma Jones, of the diner photo celebrating our janitor, our tenor, of Isabella's kindness that first night when she heard him sing. Mr. Halstead, he said quietly, you can take away my spot on stage, but you can't take away my voice. That belongs to God and my daughter. Victor's smile turned cruel. How inspirational. Perhaps you can sing to your mop bucket. He turned to Isabella. Miss Marquez, a word in private about maintaining appropriate professional distance? Isabella reached for Eli's hand, but Victor cleared his throat sharply. She let her arm fall, tears bright in her eyes. Eli, I'm so sorry. It's okay, Eli said softly, though his heart was breaking. You've done more than enough, already. He turned and walked away, refusing to give Victor the satisfaction of seeing him run. Behind him he could hear Victor's voice. Now, Miss Marquez, about your contract obligations. The hallway seemed longer than ever as Eli headed toward the janitor's closet. His mop and bucket waited in the darkness, faithful friends that had never judged him, never tried to keep him in his place. He reached for the mop handle, remembering that first night when Isabella had heard him humming. The memory of her smile back then, so genuine and warm, made the present hurt even more. But he had meant what he said. They could ban him from their stage, but they couldn't silence his spirit. He had learned that lesson in church, in his daughter's pride, in the simple joy of letting his voice soar. Tonight, he would go home and hold Maya close. Tomorrow, he would return to his duties with his head high. And someday, somehow, the truth would find its way into the light. For now, though, the empty hallway echoed with the sound of his work boots and the soft squeak of his mop bucket's wheels, a humble melody that had been his companion all along. The apartment felt smaller than usual as Eli unlocked the door, his shoulders heavy with defeat. The CPS visit had shaken them both, and now this. The familiar scent of the vegetable soup he'd left simmering in the crock-pot did nothing to lift his spirits. Maya sat at their small kitchen table, homework spread out before her, but her pencil lay untouched. Her eyes, so much like her mother's, followed him as he hung up his jacket. "Dad?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "What happened at rehearsal?" Eli's throat tightened. He filled 2 glasses with water, buying time, then sat across from her. The kitchen light flickered slightly. Another thing he needed to fix, Another reminder of all the ways he was struggling to keep their world together. "I missed the full run-through," he said finally. "After the CPS visit, I was too late." Maya pushed her textbook aside. "But you can still perform, right? They have to understand about CPS. It wasn't your fault." Eli reached across the table, covering her smaller hand with his. "Baby girl, I think." He had to pause, swallow hard. "I think it might be time to step back. Let this whole singing thing go." "No!" Maya jerked up so quickly her chair scraped against the linoleum. "Dad, you can't!" "Maya. They're bullies, all of them. Victor, Jonas, those people online. They're just jealous because you have this amazing gift, and they can't stand that you're—" She stopped, tears spilling over. "That I'm just a janitor?" Eli finished softly. "That's not what I meant." Maya's voice cracked. "You're so much more than that. When you sing, it's like, Mom is here again, like everything's okay." The mention of Sarah hit him like a physical blow. Eli stood, moving to the window. Outside, streetlights were coming on, casting warm pools of light on the cracked sidewalk. A few kids were still playing basketball at the court across the street, their laughter floating up. "I hear her in your voice," Maya continued, quieter now. "Remember how she used to sing me to sleep? That same lullaby you did at the church concert?" "Maya, honey." Eli turned back, his heart breaking at the tears streaming down his daughter's face. "Sometimes we have to make hard choices to protect what matters most. And you matter most. But Mom would want, your mother would want you safe and secure. These people filing false reports, trying to make trouble for us." He shook his head. "I can't risk your well-being for a few minutes on stage." Maya rushed to him then, throwing her arms around his waist, like she used to when she was little. "Please don't quit, Dad, please. I'm not afraid of them. We can fight this together." Eli stroked her hair, remembering how Sarah used to do the same when Maya was a baby. His daughter was trembling against him, trying so hard to be brave. "The whole town believes in you now," she mumbled into his shirt. "Mrs. Chen at the diner, Reverend Lila, all those people at the church concert. Isabella believes in you too." The mention of Isabella made his chest ache. He thought of her face in rehearsal today, singing their duet alone, the worry in her eyes. She'd risked so much to give him this chance. "When you sing." Maya pulled back to look up at him, her face tear-stained but fierce. "It's like everything we've been through means something. Like Mom can hear us. Don't let them take that away." Eli guided her back to the table, getting her settled with a tissue. He warmed up 2 bowls of soup, though neither of them had much appetite. Maya picked at hers, occasionally sniffling. "I just want you to be proud of me," she whispered finally. "Oh, sweetheart." Eli reached across the table again. "I'm always proud of you, every single day." "Then show me how to be brave," Maya pleaded. "Show me that the good guys can win sometimes." Eli's eyes burned. He stood, walking down the short hallway to their small living room. Sarah's photo sat on the bookshelf, her last Christmas, Maya on her lap, both of them laughing at something off camera. He'd been the one taking the picture, trying to capture their joy even as they all knew time was running out. His fingers traced the frame as he sank to his knees. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I don't know what to do. I can't lose this job. Maya needs stability. But our girl. She sees something in me I thought I'd lost. Help me find the strength to do what's right." The photo offered no answers, just Sarah's frozen smile and Maya's innocent joy. Behind him, he could hear his daughter's muffled sobs from the kitchen, each one cutting straight to his heart. "Guide me," he whispered to the photo, tears finally spilling over. "Show me the way." The evening shadows stretched long across the church's stained glass windows, painting the worn wooden pews in deep purples and blues. Reverend Lila stood at the pulpit, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight as she addressed the gathered crowd. The pews were filled with familiar faces from around town. Mrs. Hartley from the senior center, regulars from the diner, teachers from Maya's school, and even some of the Arts Center's staff who had come in secret. "We know Eli," Reverend Lila's voice carried clear and strong through the sanctuary. "We know his character, his dedication to Maya, and his gift. These accusations are nothing but shadows trying to dim God's light." Mrs. Hartley, her arthritis-curved hands clutching her handbag, stood up shakily. "I can personally vouch that Maya has never been left alone. When Eli works late, she stays with me and my grandchildren. We have cookies and do homework together. I've got security footage from the diner," called out Joe, the diner's owner, waving a USB drive. "Shows Eli picking Maya up right on time, every single time he's had a shift that ran late." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Reverend Lila nodded, making notes on a legal pad. "We need to document everything. Times, dates, witnesses. The truth will stand against these lies." In the back corner, Jonas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His mother, a longtime church member, sat beside him, her disapproving gaze fixed straight ahead. The weight of what he'd done pressed harder on his conscience with each passing minute. "The video clip is the most damaging piece right now," Reverend Lila continued. "It makes it sound like Eli can't actually sing, that Isabella's been covering for him, but we've all heard him here in this very church." "That's right," called out someone from the middle pews. "My grandmother cried when he sang Amazing Grace." Jonas felt his mother's hand squeeze his arm. She knew. Of course she knew. She'd raised him to know right from wrong, and lately he'd chosen wrong. "Mom," he whispered, his voice rough, "I can't." "Then make it right, Jonas Reed," she whispered back firmly. "God's watching, and so am I." The meeting continued as people offered what help they could. Teachers volunteered to write character references. Neighbors promised to sign affidavits about Maya's care. The diner staff talked about organizing a protest outside the arts center. Jonas felt each word like a stone in his stomach. He watched Reverend Lila's determined organizing, saw the genuine concern on everyone's faces, and finally couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell silent. Jonas walked slowly to the front, his footsteps echoing in the quiet church. His hands were shaking, but his mother's words rang in his ears. "Make it right." "I need to say something," he announced, his voice cracking. He turned to face the congregation, these people he'd known all his life. "The video. The one that makes Eli sound bad." He swallowed hard. "I'm the one who edited it." A collective gasp filled the church. Reverend Lila's eyes narrowed, but she remained silent, letting him continue. "Victor Halstead asked me to do it, said it was for the good of the Arts Center, to maintain standards." Jonas's words came faster now, tumbling out like a confession. "I took pieces from different rehearsals, spliced them together to make it sound like Isabella was covering for Eli's mistakes, but it was all fake. Every bit of it was manipulated." The silence that followed felt endless. Jonas couldn't look at anyone, especially not his mother. "I was jealous," he admitted quietly. "Eli was just the janitor, like me, but suddenly everyone was paying attention to him, and Victor, he knew exactly how to use that against me." Reverend Lila stepped down from the pulpit and approached Jonas. Her face was stern but not unkind. "You understand what your actions have done? The pain you've caused?" "Yes, ma'am," Jonas replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have the original recordings, all of them, and emails from Victor telling me what he wanted done. I'll sign a statement about everything." "It was wrong, what you did," Reverend Lila said firmly. "But confessing it, that's the first step toward making it right." She turned to address the congregation. "Now we know the truth, and the truth, as always, will set us free." Jonas felt his mother's hand on his shoulder, not gentle, but present. He'd disappointed her, he knew, but she was still there, just like she'd always been. "I'll help fix this," Jonas promised, looking up at last. "Whatever it takes, I'll tell everyone what really happened." The church was quiet for a moment before Reverend Lila spoke again. "Then let's get to work. We have a good man's name to clear, and not much time to do it." Mrs. Hartley's sensible shoes clicked against the polished floor of the Child Protective Services office as she marched in, her arms laden with folders. Her gray cardigan and pearl necklace gave her the appearance of everyone's favorite grandmother, but her eyes held steel. "I have documentation going back 3 years," she announced, settling into the chair across from the CPS investigator's desk. She adjusted her reading glasses and began laying out papers with methodical precision. "Every single time Eli Warren has worked late, his daughter Maya has been properly supervised." The investigator, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Chen, leaned forward to examine the papers. "These are quite detailed." "Of course they are." Mrs. Hartley's tone was crisp. "I've been the guidance counselor at Maya's school for 27 years. I keep meticulous records." She pulled out a thick folder filled with signed statements. "Here are affidavits from myself, 3 other teachers, and 5 families who have helped watch Maya. We have a whole support network for single parents in our community." Ms. Chen picked up the first affidavit, scanning it carefully. "This is very thorough." "And here," Mrs. Hartley continued, producing another stack of papers, "are Maya's attendance records, showing she's never been late or absent without proper documentation. Her grades are excellent, and she's involved in multiple after-school activities." The counselor's voice softened slightly. "That child is loved and well cared for. Her father works hard to give her everything she needs, including a stable home and consistent care." Ms. Chen was already nodding, making notes in her file. "These anonymous complaints, they came right when Mr. Warren was supposed to perform at the gala, correct?" "Exactly." Mrs. Hartley's lips pressed into a thin line. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" At the Arts Center across town, Isabella Marquez stood outside the boardroom, her hand resting on the polished wooden door. Her concert dress rustled softly. She'd come straight from rehearsal, still wearing the midnight blue gown she was meant to perform in tomorrow night. Through the door, she could hear Victor Halstead's smooth voice. "The decision is final. We cannot risk our reputation on an untrained janitor." Isabella's fingers curled into a fist. She'd spent her whole career being polite, being diplomatic, but not today. Today, she thought of Eli's voice, pure and true, rising up from his work of cleaning floors. She thought of his daughter Maya's proud face when she heard her father sing. She pushed open the door. The board members looked up in surprise as Isabella strode in, her heels echoing on the hardwood floor. Victor's practiced smile faltered slightly. "Miss Marquez, we're in the middle of a meeting." "Good." Isabella's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Then you're all here to hear what I have to say." She planted both hands on the polished table and leaned forward, meeting each board member's eyes in turn. "I will not perform tomorrow night if Eli Warren is barred from singing." The room erupted in murmurs. Victor's face reddened. "Now see here." "No, you see here?" Isabella straightened up, drawing on every ounce of presence she'd learned in decades on stage. "I've performed in opera houses across the world. I've sung for presidents and royalty, and I have never heard a voice like Eli Warren's." She pulled out her phone, playing the original, unedited recording of Eli humming that first night. The pure, rich notes filled the room, making several board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "This man," Isabella continued, her voice vibrating with controlled anger, "works harder than anyone in this building. He cleans your mess, maintains your precious stage, and does it all with dignity, while raising a daughter alone and dealing with your persecution." "Miss Marquez," a board member started, "there are standards." "Standards?" Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I know about standards. I also know about integrity. And right now, this board has shown none." She pulled an envelope from her purse and slapped it down on the table. "This is my contract for tomorrow night. Either Eli Warren performs as planned or I walk. And I will make sure every news outlet knows exactly why." Victor stood up, his face mottled. "You can't." "I can, and I will." Isabella's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Your choice, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your prejudices or keep your headlining soprano." The boardroom fell silent. Isabella stood tall, her midnight blue gown shimmering in the fluorescent lights, every inch the world-class diva they'd paid so handsomely to perform. But her eyes held something beyond professional pride. They held righteousness, and the absolute certainty that she was standing on the right side of this fight. "You have 1 hour to decide," she said quietly. "I'll be in my dressing room." She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving the board to stare at each other across their expensive table, the echo of Eli's pure, untrained voice still hanging in the air. In the hallway, Isabella's hands shook slightly as she pulled out her phone. She had calls to make, to her agent, to the press, to Reverend Lila. But first, she thought of Eli, probably at home right now, trying to explain to Maya why he couldn't perform tomorrow. She'd meant every word she'd said in that boardroom. She would not let talent and dignity be crushed under the weight of prejudice and fear, not while she had a voice to raise against it. Isabella threw open the boardroom doors, her concert dress swishing dramatically as she strode in. The board members, caught mid-discussion, looked up in surprise. "Ms. Marquez," Victor said smoothly, rising from his chair. "We're in the middle of a private meeting." "Perfect timing, then." Isabella placed her contract on the polished table with a firm snap. "Because we need to discuss tomorrow night's performance." The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew that expression on her face. It was the same one she wore when playing fierce operatic heroines. "I will not sing if Eli Warren is barred from performing," she stated, her voice clear and steady. "And before you try to threaten me with breach of contract, you should know that my lawyer is already preparing a statement about discriminatory practices." Victor's face reddened. "This is completely unprofessional." "No," Isabella cut him off. "What's unprofessional is fabricating evidence against a good man. What's unethical is filing false reports to Child Protective Services." A murmur went through the room. Board member Helen Matthews leaned forward. "What exactly are you saying?" the stagehand confessed. Isabella met their eyes one by one. Jonas admitted to doctoring that rehearsal footage on Victor's orders. The boardroom erupted in shocked whispers. Victor's face went from red to white. "Furthermore," Isabella continued, "Mrs. Hartley from Maya's school has provided documentation proving the anonymous childcare complaints were false. She's speaking with CPS right now." The board's treasurer, Mr. Peterson, cleared his throat. "Victor, is this true?" Before Victor could respond, Isabella's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then smiled grimly. "And that's the local news asking for comment about why tomorrow's gala might be canceled." "Canceled?" Several board members spoke at once. "Word travels fast in small towns," Isabella said. "People are already hearing that I won't perform without Eli, and they're sharing their opinions quite vocally on social media." She pulled up her phone and read, "If they won't let our janitor sing, we don't want their fancy gala." That's from the diner owner. It has 300 shares already. Helen Matthews was frantically checking her own phone. "The donors are starting to ask questions. The Hendersons just emailed. They're reconsidering their attendance." "This is absurd," Victor sputtered. "We can't let a janitor dictate." "Oh, stop it, Victor," snapped Mrs. Rodriguez, the oldest board member. "Your prejudice is showing." She turned to Isabella. "But the practical problem remains. The hall is booked, the programs are printed, and we have 500 guests coming tomorrow night." Isabella's expression softened. "I have a suggestion." She pulled up another message on her phone. "Reverend Lila has offered the church for the opening number. It's where Eli and I have been rehearsing anyway. The acoustics are beautiful." "The church?" Victor scoffed. "Our donors paid for a professional venue." "The church, where half those donors attend services," Isabella reminded him. "Where their children were baptized and their parents were married. It means something to this community." Mr. Peterson was typing rapidly on his laptop. "We could live stream it to the main hall. The tech team says it's doable. We already have the equipment for recording the gala." "The publicity angle could work in our favor," Helen mused. "A grassroots collaboration between high art and community spaces. This is our chance to show what the Art Center really stands for," Isabella pressed. Not exclusion, but inclusion. Not walls, but bridges. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded slowly. I move that we relocate the opening number to the church, with a live stream to the main hall. I second, said Helen quickly. This is highly irregular, Victor protested, but his voice had lost its authority. Mr. Peterson looked up from his laptop. The Henderson Foundation just emailed again. They're doubling their donation if we proceed with the church venue. Something about community values. One by one, hands went up around the table. Victor remained seated, his jaw clenched, as the motion passed. Excellent, Isabella said, gathering her contract. I'll let Reverend Lila know we need the space tomorrow night. And Victor? She paused at the door. I believe the board will want to discuss your position separately. As she left, she heard Mrs. Rodriguez's stern voice. Now then, Victor, about these allegations of falsified evidence. Isabella hurried down the hallway, her heels clicking against the floor. Her phone was already in her hand, fingers flying over the keys as she typed a message to Eli. Get your Sunday shoes ready. Tomorrow night we're going to church. The bedside lamp cast a warm glow across Maya's room as Eli sat on the edge of her bed. Even at 14, she still wanted him near when she felt nervous. Her collection of science textbooks and the robot kit she'd been tinkering with lay scattered on her desk, forgotten in the excitement of tomorrow's big day. What if something goes wrong, Dad? Maya pulled her quilt up to her chin, her dark eyes wide with worry. What if people are mean again? Eli smoothed a strand of hair from her forehead, just like he used to do when she was little. Remember what your mom always said about butterflies in your stomach? Maya smiled slightly. They're just trying to help you fly. That's right. Eli adjusted her purple comforter, tucking it around her shoulders the way she liked. And tomorrow, we're going to let those butterflies carry us wherever they want to take us. But what about Mr. Halstead, and those horrible things he said? Maya's voice quivered. What if he tries to stop you again? Eli took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes people who are scared of change try to make others scared too. But you know what's stronger than fear? Love, Maya offered, her expression brightening a little. And truth, Eli added. Mrs. Hartley, Reverend Lila, Miss Isabella, they all stood up for what's right. Even Jonas found the courage to tell the truth in the end. Maya sat up suddenly, wrapping her arms around his neck. I'm so proud of you, Dad. Mom would be too. Eli held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. His throat tightened with emotion. I'm the proud one, baby girl. You've been so brave through all of this. Will you sing me Mom's lullaby? Maya asked softly, settling back against her pillows. The one that started everything? Eli nodded, his voice gentle in the quiet room. The melody that had caught Isabella's attention that night on the stage now filled their small apartment, carrying years of love and memory in each note. Maya's eyes grew heavy as he sang, her breathing becoming steady and peaceful. When he was sure she was asleep, Eli quietly stood and moved to the kitchen. His old suit hung on the back of a chair, the same one he'd worn to Maya's middle school graduation last year. He'd spent his lunch break, having the pants hemmed at the discount tailor downtown, counting out careful dollars from his emergency fund. The kitchen counter became his workbench as he laid out his supplies: shoe polish, an old rag, and the dress shoes he'd kept stored away since his military days. The familiar routine of polishing brought back memories of early morning inspections, of learning that dignity often lived in the smallest details. Each circular motion of the rag brought more shine to the worn leather. Eli worked methodically, letting his mind settle into the rhythm. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. But tonight, in this quiet moment, he could prepare himself properly. The suit itself needed attention too. He brushed it carefully, smoothing away dust and straightening the lapels. It wasn't fancy, no designer label or fine wool, but it was clean and pressed and honest, like him. In the dim kitchen light, Eli laid everything out with precision. Shoes aligned perfectly, suit hanging wrinkle-free, his one good tie draped beside it. The sight reminded him of setting out Maya's first day of school clothes all those years ago, her tiny dresses and shiny shoes, ready for adventure. A police siren wailed somewhere in the distance, and a neighbor's television murmured through the thin walls. But here in his kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of tomorrow's possibility, Eli found a moment of pure peace. He touched the wedding ring he still wore, closing his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered to the quiet room, to whatever grace had brought him this second chance. "Thank you for not letting me give up." The digital clock on the microwave blinked its late-night numbers, reminding him that morning would come soon. But for now, Eli stood in his small kitchen, surrounded by the humble preparations for something extraordinary, his heart full of gratitude for this unexpected turn in his path. Dawn crept through the stained-glass windows of the old church, painting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden floors. Eli Warren stood at the entrance, his trusted mop bucket beside him, its familiar weight somehow comforting. The sanctuary was empty and quiet, just like the Performing Arts Center had been that first night. His work clothes had been traded for a pressed navy suit, the only one he owned, carefully steamed the night before. But the bucket, that was non-negotiable. Isabella had insisted it would make the perfect statement. This was who he was, who he'd always been, and who he was proud to be. The morning light caught the brass fixtures, making them glow like warm honey. Eli's footsteps echoed in the silence as he walked down the center aisle, bucket handle squeaking slightly with each step. The familiar scent of lemon cleaner and old hymnals filled his nose. He placed the bucket carefully at center stage, just as they'd rehearsed. In a few hours, this space would be filled with people, neighbors, strangers, those watching through cameras and screens. The thought made his throat tight. To calm his nerves, Eli did what he always did when cleaning alone. He began to hum the lullaby, the same one Isabella had first heard him sing. The melody was as familiar as breathing, a song his wife had sung to Maya when she was small. "Sleep, my child, and peace attend thee." The words came softly at first, barely more than a whisper. His rich baritone filled the empty church, wrapping around the pillars and floating up to the rafters. The door creaked open, and Reverend Lila slipped in quietly. She moved to the piano but didn't interrupt, letting Eli's voice continue to fill the space. Her fingers found the keys, adding gentle accompaniment to his humming. More people began filtering in, the early morning choir members, regular parishioners, curious townspeople who'd heard about what was planned. They took their seats silently, not wanting to break the spell of Eli's voice. Isabella appeared in a simple black dress, far different from her usual performance gowns. She stood in the back, watching Eli with tears in her eyes. This was the voice that had stopped her cold that night, the voice that had reminded her so strongly of her own mother's lullabies. Maya slipped into a front pew, clutching her grandmother's shawl around her shoulders. Mrs. Hartley sat beside her, patting her hand reassuringly. The girl's eyes never left her father as he sang, pride shining on her face. The camera crew worked quietly, setting up their equipment for the live stream. The red lights blinked on, sending Eli's voice out beyond the church walls to those watching in the concert hall and at home. Jonas stood at the soundboard, his usual smirk replaced by something that looked like regret as he carefully adjusted the levels. He'd learned something about humility these past few weeks. The morning sun climbed higher, and more people arrived. The pews filled until there was standing room only. Someone opened the side doors to let the overflow crowd gather on the lawn where speakers had been set up. Eli's voice grew stronger, more confident. The lullaby swelled, and then something magical happened. A few voices in the congregation began to join in, humming along. The sound spread like a gentle wave, first the choir members, then the regular churchgoers who remembered the tune. Soon the entire church was filled with harmony. Hundreds of voices, from trembling elderly sopranos to deep bass rumbles, all supporting Eli's lead. Isabella's clear tones soared above them all, weaving through the melody like a silver thread. In the concert hall across town, the donors and board members watched on giant screens. The camera caught every detail. The morning light streaming through the windows, the simple mop bucket beside Eli's polished shoes, the diverse faces of the congregation joined in song. Tears rolled down cheeks in both venues. The wealthy patrons in their formal wear found themselves swaying along with the church cleanup volunteers in their work clothes. Music had erased every boundary, every distinction. Through the live-stream chat, comments poured in from around the world. People shared stories of their own lullabies, their own hidden talents, their own struggles to be seen and heard. The simple scene in a small-town church had touched something universal. Eli's voice carried the final notes, clear and true. The congregation's harmony surrounded him like a warm embrace, lifting the lullaby to the very rafters of the old church. In that moment, he wasn't a janitor who learned to sing. He was simply a man sharing his gift, surrounded by a community that had chosen to rise and support him. The morning light streamed through the stained glass, bathing everyone in colors of hope. The sanctuary buzzed with energy as the last notes of Eli's performance faded away. Tears streamed down faces throughout the congregation, and even the camera operators wiped their eyes. The live-stream comments flooded in thousands of hearts and messages of support lighting up the screens. Victor Halstead stood rigid in his expensive suit, his face ashen as he watched donors, his carefully cultivated wealthy patrons, openly weeping and embracing the very man he'd tried to silence. Several board members were already turning away from him, their disapproving whispers carrying across the church. Jonas Reed stepped forward from the sound booth, his shoulders hunched with shame. His hands trembled as he took the microphone, facing the gathered crowd. "I need to say something," Jonas's voice cracked. "That doctored recording that made Mr. Warren sound like he was lip-syncing, I made it. Mr. made it. Halstead pressured me. But that's no excuse. I was jealous and bitter, and I let my own insecurities make me do something terrible." He turned to face Eli directly. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Warren. You have real talent, and I tried to destroy that because I felt invisible." The silence in the church was heavy. Eli stood from his place near the piano and walked over to Jonas, extending his hand. "We've all felt invisible sometimes," he said quietly. "Thank you for telling the truth." Victor's face had grown even paler. Board members were now openly glaring at him, and Mrs. Lacker. Hartley, one of the center's biggest donors, was already on her phone, likely calling for an emergency board meeting. "This is preposterous," Victor sputtered, but his usual commanding tone had withered. This is all a misunderstanding." Isabella stepped forward, her elegant performance gown rustling. "Is it, Mr. Halstead? Shall we discuss the NDA you tried to force on Eli, or the mysterious cuts to his work hours? Or perhaps the anonymous tip to Child Protective Services?" "I resign," Victor blurted out, his carefully maintained facade crumbling. "Effective immediately." He turned on his heel and strode toward the exit, but Mrs. Hartley's voice stopped him. "The board accepts your resignation, Mr. Halstead, and will be conducting a full review of your tenure." Her tone was steel wrapped in silk. "We've clearly lost our way when it comes to our mission of making the arts accessible to all." The tension in the room began to dissolve. People started chatting, many approaching Jonas to acknowledge his courage in confessing. Maya ran to her father and threw her arms around him, her face glowing with pride. Mrs. Hartley made her way through the crowd to where Eli stood with his daughter. "Mr. Warren, the board would like to speak with you, if you have a moment." Eli nodded, giving Maya's shoulder a squeeze before following Mrs. Hartley to a small group of board members gathered near the altar. Their faces were warm, nothing like the cold dismissal he'd faced in previous meetings. "Mr. Warren," Mrs. Hartley began, "we owe you an apology, but more than that, we owe you an opportunity, one that should have been offered long ago." Another board member, Dr. Chen, stepped forward. "We'd like to create a new position at the Arts Center, Artist in Residence and Facilities Manager. It would combine your current responsibilities with official recognition of your musical talents. You'd oversee the maintenance staff while also participating in performances and community outreach programs. The position comes with full benefits," added Mrs. Hartley, "and a salary commensurate with your dual roles. We need someone who understands both the practical and artistic aspects of running a performing arts center, someone who can bridge worlds." Eli stood silent for a moment, processing their words. He thought of all the nights he'd spent cleaning empty stages, humming to himself. He thought of Maya and how proud she'd been to hear him sing. He thought of Isabella, who'd first seen him as more than just the night janitor. "Would I still get to use my mop bucket?" he asked, a small smile playing at his lips. Mrs. Hartley laughed warmly. "Mr. Warren, that bucket has become iconic. I think it needs its own special place in the center's lobby." "Then I accept," Eli said simply, his voice steady and sure. The board members broke into genuine smiles, and Dr. Chen immediately began outlining plans for the position. As they talked, Eli caught sight of Maya beaming at him from across the church, Isabella standing beside her with an equally bright smile. For the first time in years, Eli felt completely visible, not just as the quiet janitor, not just as the surprise singer, but as himself, a father, a worker, an artist, all of these things together. The weight of having to choose between dignity and dreams lifted from his shoulders. He would still clean the stages, but now he would also sing on them. He would still care for the building, but now he would help shape its future too. It wasn't about rising above his old job. It was about bringing all the parts of himself together, at last. The stage gleamed under the dim work lights, empty except for Eli Warren and his mop. 3 weeks had passed since the live-streamed performance that changed everything. The polished wood still held echoes of that night, but now peace had settled back into the corners of the Lakeside Performing Arts Center. Eli worked methodically, his movements careful and practiced. His new badge, Artist in Residence Facilities, caught the light as he moved. The title still felt strange, but good strange, like a new pair of shoes that were finally breaking in just right. The sound of the stage door opening made him look up. Isabella Marquez stood there, silhouetted in the doorway, holding 2 paper bags that smelled wonderfully of Chinese food. A pair of folding chairs was tucked under her arm. "I thought you might be hungry," she called out, her voice carrying easily in the empty hall. "Unless you're too busy being important now?" Eli chuckled, setting his mop aside. "Never too important to eat." Isabella crossed the stage with the grace that came from years of performing, but there was something different about her now. A lightness in her step that hadn't been there before. She set down the food and unfolded the chairs with a metallic snap that echoed through the space. "Maya told me you'd be here late," Isabella said, pulling containers from the bags. "She's at her robotics meeting?" "Yeah." Eli smiled, thinking of his daughter's excitement about her new project. "The seniors are teaching the kids to program musical patterns." Who knew retirement homes and robots would go so well together? They settled into their chairs, the stage lights casting long shadows behind them. Steam rose from containers of lo mein and kung pao chicken. The familiar scent reminded Eli of late nights with his wife, sharing takeout after her hospital shifts. "The fellowship applications are rolling in," Isabella said, passing him a pair of chopsticks. "Stories that would break your heart and rebuild it. A bus driver who composes symphonies between routes. A crossing guard who carves violins." "Hands, voices," Eli murmured, naming the fellowship she'd founded. "Sarah would have loved that. My wife, she always said beauty finds a way." Isabella nodded, understanding in her eyes. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the empty theater holding them like an old friend. "The surgery's scheduled," Isabella said finally, her voice soft but steady. "Next month. The doctor says with rest and therapy I should be back by spring." Eli set down his container. "You'll sing again." "I will," she smiled. "And in the meantime, the fellowship will keep the music flowing. Different voices, different songs, like that lullaby of yours." The mention of the lullaby, the one that had started everything, settled between them like a gentle reminder. Eli glanced at the spot where he'd stood that first night, mop in hand, heart heavy with loneliness, never imagining how one simple melody could change so much. The work lights dimmed slightly, an automatic setting marking the late hour. In the softer glow, the stage felt more intimate, like a living room shared between friends. They finished their meal, trading small stories about their days. Jonas learning sound engineering, Victor's replacement bringing fresh energy to the board, the diner's wall of local talent growing picture by picture. As they packed up the empty containers, Eli felt the familiar tune rising in his throat. Without thinking, he began to hum the lullaby. The same notes that had once frozen Isabella in her tracks, the melody that had opened this unexpected chapter in both their lives. This time, Isabella didn't freeze. Her smile grew warm and knowing as she set down the last container. Then, softly, naturally, she joined in, her voice weaving around his in perfect harmony. The simple melody filled the empty theater, two voices sharing not just a song but all it had come to mean: second chances, unexpected friendships, the courage to begin again. Their humming faded naturally into the peaceful quiet of the stage, leaving behind a silence full of hope. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Elias Eli Warren, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.